What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning to another episode of Right on Cue Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Logan Chestnut, Small Batch Barbecue. Joining us tonight is Mr. AJ Johnson from the Norada Barbecue team. And also joining tonight is a very special guest, our good friend, Mr. Hunt Blackledge from Smokey B's Barbecue. What's up, fellas?
Hey.
What up? What up?
Oh man, I feel like an old man. I feel like I got a glimpse of the future when I'm an old man. Like how stiff my neck and arms and my back and everything is.
I mean, that's every day, right?
Yeah, every day. No, I give car crash experience a 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. So, but yeah, man. No, enough of my bad luck. How's it going, fellas? We're back fresh off the Smoke on the Shore this past weekend, one of the premier, if not the premier, barbecue tournament in the Southeast. What do we think, guys? How we feel?
Man, it's a well-run contest. We have everything we need. It's quickly become one of our favorites. We'll do everything we can to make that contest yearly.
This will be my first year ever to miss that one. It broke my heart to not cook with you guys and get my ass cooked by y'all royally. But no, man, let's AJ, let's talk about your cook, buddy. How you feeling?
Same old. You look at squirrel, find a nut every now and then,
Mm-hmm. Tennessee, man. You got third? What'd you get?
I got 6 chicken, 3rd pork, and 3rd overall.
Your pork's looking really good, man. It's come a long way. You have figured out the secret, and you're turning in some proper pork.
There you go.
Dude, my boy down here in near Clarksville, he took home first place pork in the pro division. I was very excited to see that, man.
Heck yeah, man.
Backyard made its name known this weekend. Mr. Hunt down here laying a pipe for all the backyarders, winning the rib burn, and that's with everybody. And I mean, I can't tell you how many world champions were there this past weekend. At least 5.
Oh yeah, big time.
It's something else. It was definitely a good cook. Friday night, relaxed. We had fun with it. And box looked good. The sampling, we really liked them. I didn't know that was going to happen though. That was a pleasant surprise.
I mean, in that like list of people, I mean, yeah, Janky Leg, Heavy Smoke. I mean, Hold Your Horses. I mean, all the big wig world champs were there. QU, 2-time world champ QU, he was there. I mean, the barbecue bus, shout out bus. I mean, tons of heavy hitters, and honestly, it doesn't get better than that.
Sure.
Yeah, so good times for sure.
Yeah, man. I think Hunt was still in amazement. when they was playing this song, he was just looking around. I was like, "Man, that's you! Get up, get your prize."
I was sitting there thinking, man, somebody else has my walk-up
song. Somebody took what was your walk-up song?
Regulators.
Regulator, Warren G.
That's it.
That's right. That's right, man. That's awesome, dude. I mean, and was a perfect setup for our show today, because I mean, this man literally won, a rib burn with all the world champs there, so he's got to know what he's doing. Hunt, tell the people. So last time we talked to you, you were cooking on a hasty bake and some cans, but you have transitioned to the majors. So tell these people now what you're cooking on.
Yeah, I'm still. It's kind of gonna depend on the comp, but we're opening the season. We do a lot of 3 meats, and so I'm cooking on an Outlaw, the Patio XL. It's a 24x60 model, and I'm still carrying a drum on the trailer also. But I am very much digging the Outlaw. It is a fantastic smoker.
What do you think? Do you think the Outlaw has like elevated your rib game since you started cooking on it, like compared to some of the other cookers you've cooked on?
Well, I'm sure we'll dig into it a little bit deeper, but I'm doing a bit of a hybrid cook. Even like prior to this year, I have always started ribs out on the can, And then oftentimes the last 30 minutes of the open process, I'd swap my ribs over to a pellet smoker. Just really trying to kind of dry out the bark a little bit, not to get a tough bark, but just to really make sure the rub was set before I hit my wrap process. And I'm essentially doing the same thing on the Outlaw, where on the can I'm giving it about 90 minutes and then putting it over on the Outlaw for about 30 minutes prior to wrapping it. But then something special is happening in the wrap process on the Outlaw. I don't know if it's the change in the heat dynamics, the way the flow of the heat as opposed from bottom up to, right over left. I don't know, but I have really noticed a difference in the tenderness in my pork game since playing with it on the Outlaw.
I got you. Well, man, let's kind of dig into it. You've seen the last couple of weeks, we've been talking. We had my man Hess, gave us the chicken lowdown, stud on the chicken, and then Girls Can Grill showed up and did the pork. So, man, like I said, when I wanted to do the protein month, I wanted to talk to my friends who I know are specializes in that protein. And like I said, when I think of ribs, you're the man I think of. So thank you for being here today for that. And let's dig into it, man. Let's kind of go over the whole process between picking out and all that jazz. So first off, what brand are you brand specific when it comes to ribs? Like what brand are you looking for?
Not really brand specific. I cook Prairie Fresh. I like Valari. The Friday night rib burn was some good looking Smithfields that I found at Aldi in town here a couple of weeks ago. So I'd say usually between those three brands, I find what I need. So as long as the rib looks good, I'm gonna cook it.
Hey, let's talk about that, man. Speaking of some good looking ribs, here's a picture of some of your ribs. I think this is the Friday night burn.
Yeah, that looks like the Smithfields.
Yeah, I mean, look at these bad boys. I mean, so when you're picking them out, what are you looking for? What's like the most important thing to you?
First and foremost, I'm looking at marbling, and a close second, I'm looking at thickness. I want a good thick rib, and the cartilage side is one thing. When you pick the pack up, there's probably going to be some skirt over there, so you can't tell a whole lot, but you can grab the bone side, and if the bone side is pretty thick, it's going to be a good rib.
I got you. I mean, AJ, how about you, man? When you're looking for a rib, because you're not too much of a slouch in ribs yourself, former rib team of the year, right here. What is something you're looking for when it comes to ribs? Like ranking, because I mean, everybody here knows like the three categories. I mean, you got the marbling, the thickness, and the color or overall. I mean, the bone structure, but you can't really tell that in the package. What is your give me all those three, rank 1, 2, 3 of the importance to you?
For me, the first thing I look for is thickness, and then I go for marbling. Because you want a good bit of marbling, but it's not a deal breaker for me. If it's thick, I like it. And then I try to kind of bend the package a little bit and see how long the bone is, because I don't like short bones. I like a pretty good bone. And other than that, man, I just thickness is the main thing, marbling, and then just bone length. Just try to make sure they don't curve off in left field a little bit. And if it meet those three and don't taper real bad, man, I try to pick it up and freeze it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like that. Like my especially thing I kind of learned is thick ribs win. Or I'm sure people won with thin ribs, but I'm not good enough to do it. So I mean, I'm trying to get all the buffer I possibly can. But like I said, if you look at these ribs right here, I mean, it's a great even thickness all the way through. You ever seen those ribs? I hate that whenever I can't use my left arm. It's a little sore. When it's thick on one side and it kind of tapers off. I hate when that happens.
Yeah.
When you look at a rib, how is something like, if you have to use something like that, would you just trim more on the thick side and sacrifice some more bones, or like what's your trim process looking like, Hunt?
Yeah, I'm gonna sculpt it out. If you look down there, what I call the thick end, the first bone always gets knocked off anyways, and a lot of times I take the second bone as well. I'm typically going to be trimming to somewhere between 8, 9, 10 bones, depending on what I think I can get off of the rack. But the picture you have up right now, like I'm looking at that, and I already know bones 1 and 2, they're not going in my box. That's just protection on that end of the set of ribs right there. It's usually starting around bone number 3, and if I'm lucky, bone 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 are the ones that are going to make it into my box. And it's kind of like you said, it's a matter of, there's a lot you can actually hide in a rib box. Whether you need to put them on the backside, top side. I mean, even if you're just running a 6-bone box, you can really stagger a rib box and still make it look good. And so that, jumping ahead of just a little bit, I think that's probably where I have picked up some strength in the rib cook, and it was a process. But don't put bones in the box you don't want judged. If you got 6 good ones, put 6 good ones in the box. Don't go for 7, 8, 9, and 10 if you don't want the judge to judge them.
Right. We'll definitely talk about box building and stuff like that later on in the show. But all right, so walk me through your process. Like, in what day during the week do you usually like to trim? I mean, obviously you want to trim ahead of time.
Yeah. For me, it's it really just kind of depends on what's going on at work. But I mean, ideally, I'm trimming pretty much all of my meats on Tuesday, except for chicken is usually on Wednesday.
Right, definitely. And then when you get done, you're going to throw it in.
Yeah.
You know, crowd back. Look at these bad boys. Good Lord,
things is pretty, ain't they?
I mean, that one on the left, especially. How you doing? How you doing? How you doing? I feel like Joey from Friends. How you doing?
That's right.
But no, I mean, that's right. Holy crap! I'll take these ribs all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. I mean,
right.
when you're talking about marbling, it doesn't get much prettier than this.
Sure.
Yeah.
These are your Saturday ribs, right?
These are Saturday ribs. These I cooked Valari on Saturday. Just beautiful ribs. The Valari the pork has such an amazing taste. I really like it. To me, Valari can be a little bit temperamental in the cook. Saturday, I just did not have my A game. I actually did a Logan cook on Saturday, an hour and 10 minutes on the drum, and my ribs were at 190 degrees.
Don't you love it when that happens?
So I told AJ was next to me. I was like, dude, I'm at 190. The rub was set. I went and threw them on the counter for like 35 minutes before I wrapped them.
I mean, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, though, because in the whole thing of competition cooking, there's going to be dozens and if not hundreds of times, if you do it enough, that you're going to have to pivot, and you're going to run into. I mean, AJ, you've run into something like that before, haven't you?
Yes,
where,
sir.
I mean, your meat just for some reason just turbo cooks.
Yep.
Or it drags, behind, and it's how you pivot on that. So Hunt, that's a good thing you kind of brought up. I don't know if it was maybe the humidity in the air or whatnot, but your ribs, kind of turbo cooked on you, and you pulled them off. If you notice this and know how to do it, you can still save your pork. It's not going to ruin it for you. But just pull it off, and like you said, you let them rest for about half an hour.
Yep, let them rest, and then from there, I tempt them again after that little bit of rest, and I had dropped back down into the mid 160. So I went ahead, did my wrap, and threw them on the outlaw, and at that point, I actually proceeded to not make it to my usual timeline. I had to push the ribs very close to chicken turn in to get them as tender as I would like for them to be. So ultimately they didn't quite get the rest that I would have liked out of them, but
Mhm.
they're still a pretty good bite. I think AJ tried one of them. They were a pretty good bite.
Oh yeah, man.
What? Oh, go ahead, AJ.
I was gonna say, yeah, man. The bite to me was it wasn't as good as Fridays, but it was very, very close. Like very close, in my opinion.
Yeah. What brand or what kind of ribs were those again? What you say it was?
Valari.
Valari. Is that a newer brand or I haven't heard of those?
They're out over East Coast, I believe, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And
is it the breed or
no? That Valari is the I guess you'd just call it the producer, the manufacturer.
Like co-packer or something.
I like the Prairie Fresh, whatever
I'm
they
pretty
do.
sure Valari is a Duroc blend of hog, but it just they're very well marbled. The pork just has man, I wish I could explain the taste. It's porky, but there's a sweetness with it that it's a really good tasting rib.
I'll have to check those out.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to the earlier in the stages of the process. So yeah, you get to your comp, you're set up, you take your ribs out of your packaging. What are we doing, and what time?
Yeah, I used to be really kind of strict on my rib timeline, like between 7 and 8 p.m. I got to be doing this, and I'm not so much on that anymore. 3 or 4 in the afternoon, all the way down to whenever fits. But I'm going to pull them out of the pack, have a look at them, make sure nothing changed from me vac sealing them to the point where I'm about to start looking at them. Heck, half the time I forget to pull membrane, so I've got to pull a membrane off of the back of it. I do a little hybrid on the membrane. I like to leave a little strip up at the top and down on the bone side because the way I cook them, there's going to be blowouts. If there's not blowouts, it's not done. So I like to leave a little strip of membrane in place. Then we're going to get ready to inject. And I inject my ribs, and then I will, once they're injected, I like to wrap them up in some cellophane wrap and put them to bed for the night.
I got you. So you do. So what? Let's talk about injection. So you, if you don't mind sharing with the group, like, do you have a certain injection you enjoy? Like for me, I love the Butcher's pork. It's a great one.
Yep. I've used Butcher's. I bounce between really about 3 different ones. Just straight up Cosmos pork is really good pork injection. LC's Boss Hog is another one of those. It's just solid. Man Meats. I use Man Meats his pork injection Friday night on those Smithfields for the rib burn. And just a solid injection. And then I'm going to add, typically I'm adding some phosphates. It kind of depends on which I'm using for my primary injection as to how much phosphates I'm going to add. I'm also looking at that marbling. If it's a super marbled rib, I'm not putting as much phosphates into it. Then the balance is some apple juice, maple syrup, chicken stock. So I go basically just I have a 28-ounce shaker bottle. So it's 10 ounces of juice, 10 ounces of stock, 4 ounces of maple syrup. And then I like to get a good healthy tablespoon of Bolden Beefy in there.
There you go. Bolden Beefy makes everything good.
That's just that's that savoriness to it. Just, it's hard to beat it.
It is hard. All right, so you're going to inject your ribs and you wrap them in cellophane. And people who don't know, if you ever wrap them in cellophane the night before, I mean, if you like I do, I just put the ribs in a pan like majority of people do, and the next day you're pretty much brining them because all the juices come out there. But I've wrapped them in cellophane before, and I'll tell you what, the amount of liquid that you don't see is definitely a big deal. There's definitely not as much leakage out of the pork as there is when you just open air and leave them in the pan.
But you take a short window, like Friday for the rib burn, we drove from Mississippi up to Nashville in the wee morning hours, and by the time I was set up, I don't know what AJ, it was probably like 9:30, something like that. So not my usual time frame. So actually, I didn't wrap those couple of racks of ribs. I injected them up, and then I just poured all the extra injection on top of them and let them sit and chilling out in my Cambrai.
Right. All right. So we're fast forwarding. We got the ribs in the refrigerator or ice box, whatever you want. The next morning, day of, you're waking up. What time are you getting going?
I'm gonna light my fire on the drum 6:30 in the morning, and as soon as I light the drum, I go inside and I work on the bone side first. And I'm gonna layer my rubs on the bone side. I need maybe 20 minutes, and then I'm gonna flip over to meat side, get them on my 22-inch cooking grid, laid out the way that I want them, and then season up the top side.
Nice.
So,
and I actually have a picture of that from, these are the award-winning ribs right here that we have, and you put them on, like I said. So you take the grate off of your can.
Yeah,
and just
easier for me to move around. Yeah,
I got you. And I see that you got the shaker. Do you take all your rubs like I do with chicken and put them all in there and blend them together, or do you do one by one?
With chicken, it's a complete blend of everything. With ribs, I usually I'll jump into rubs. My base layer is LC's Rawhide. There's just a great balance. Yes, sir. Salt, pepper, garlic. You get the nice, presentation of the pepper flakes, but it's not pepper forward, if that makes sense. So excellent rub. Then after that, I like to put my high sugar content rubs as close to the meat as possible. So next step for me is going to be the honey pecan from Man Meat.
Okay. Amazing rub.
Oh my goodness. Grand slam. Aaron did just.
Oh, such a good
rub. I can't speak volumes enough about that rub.
It is one of my favorites, that's for sure. But I'll tell you what, with that one, he's grinds that as fine as a finishing dust. Like if you use that as a finishing dust, you don't need a grinder or nothing. Just put it in a shaker and you're good to go. Because that's how fine it is.
Yep, it is. It is for sure. And then the JDQ hot. Hell State West.
little JDQ. That's a sweet, but
that's a sweet. I like to go with the hot rub.
Yep.
And that's my backside.
I got you.
Appreciate it, Pat.
So are we doing the same layering on the back as the front on the top side? Or are we kind of mixing it up a little bit, a little heavier on the back?
Little different on the top side. Top side is the same first two, but instead of the JDQ hot on the top side, it's going to be Razor Racks all day AP.
Another great rub that I have. It is I love both of those. And AJ, when you do your rub, are you doing like a medium coat, a heavy coat, light coat? What kind of are you adding your rubs to? Are you still want to see the meat when you're adding it?
Yeah, I still want to see the meat. I would say I'm just depending on what I put on there, from light to medium. Nothing is really heavy to me. I mean, I think Hunt might go a little bit lighter than me. Just by looking at his pictures. I mean, I'll go just a little bit more heavy, but I mean, you can still see the meat, especially when it sweats in. For sure.
I will say this though, I used to go really heavy on my rubs. I really wanted to layer them on there, and I've noticed that when you do it, it takes a hard. It takes a long time to set the rub, and when it does, it flakes off. So it's definitely something to let's go light to medium coat. You still want to see the meat, and it helps kind of even. Hey Matt, thanks so much for tuning in, man. We appreciate it, man. So that's where we're at. And by the way, my wife would love you so much for putting that aluminum foil down on the table to keep things nice and neat. Because I mean, y'all see in my trailer, it's a damn disaster. So I'm all about that. Hey, another thing I want to ask. I mean, I know AJ does this. I'm telling some of your secrets, AJ. You trim, like when you're trimming your ribs, did you trim along the edges and kind of round off the edges on your ribs?
Yeah. Well, on the horizontal length of it, yeah, I do. On the end bones, I don't really care. They're getting tossed anyways. But on that cartilage end, to me, you can get some weird overhangs when you get ready for box presentation. So I do round it off with some scissors.
So you don't dog ear on the edge. Like some people will dog ear. Some people will dog ear the edges. But yeah, the kind of rounding off. Somebody tells me it makes it more aerodynamic. Some people says, it helps with not poking through, like you said. So I don't know if it's true, but I mean, it can't hurt. A lot of people that win do it. So
if I can poke a hole in the foil, it's going to happen. So
yeah,
that's the worst.
Yeah, I mean the only thing that I think of, the reason why I do it, just talking to some of the older guys that became before us, they was kind of gave me a tip saying that, sometimes that can get a little bit darker and then can make your wrap, taste a little bitter if it burns or whatnot. So I try to make it, like you said, more aerodynamic as possible. I'm not sure if it helps or not. It just in my head why I do it.
Sure. There's a lot of shit we do that doesn't make any sense, but we do it anyways.
Yep. Never miss a step.
Let's just be honest. All right. So we're moving on, man. So we got your and the can use a Hunsaker, right?
Yeah, Hunsaker.
All right. So you're running that thing straight up and down. What charcoal are we using?
I'm a Fogo guy. I've played around, so many different brands, and they all have pluses. Some have minuses. With Fogo, consistent temperatures for me. I know exactly where I'm going to be, and consistent flavor. To me, Fogo is pretty mild on the flavor, and it lets me determine the smoke characteristics that I want on the meat.
I got you. AJ, what are you using? You got a brand you B&B?
No, I used to, but last year me and Hunt, I used to take him food, and he was like, "Man, it's a little smoky," and I was like, "Yeah, I taste it too." And I found out that B&B, nothing against B&B, people they use it and it's great, but for me, the way I cook on chicken, B&B just gave an off flavor, so I switched to Jealous Devil for chicken, and I went to Fogo for ribs. Probably could use Fogo for chicken too, but just one of them things where Jealous Devil been working, don't want to change it up. But it just B&B just gave an off flavor, the way I cook my food, in my opinion.
I got you. And you guys always know I'm a good charcoal company. I love the way that they burn consistent. And like I said, I like the consistency of flavor and the evenness of the burn. But I mean, any of the brands we mentioned tonight are fantastic.
Guys are winning cooking with all of them.
There's people. The Charcoal Cowboy. Our friend, Girls Can Grill. That's if she uses the Charcoal Cowboy. As long as you don't use the lighter fluid drenched charcoal, I think you'll be all right. But you know what? If you're competing against us, absolutely, the lighter fluid charcoal is the secret to winning success.
Match like Kingsford.
That's right.
That's like Kingsford. That is the only charcoal you should use when you cook against us. We're evil. Anyways, all right. So we're moving on. What temperature are we starting off at the ribs at?
Pretty much straight up 300. I'm not going to lose sleep if they're 275 to 300. I'm good with it. I don't want to creep too much over 300. The Hunsaker, the way it your temperature output, great temp is generally going to be about 30 degrees hotter than what you're actually registering. So I want to keep it 275 to 300.
So in the Hunt, I got a question for you. When you wrap, when you're cooking in the drum, would you kind of temp it down a little bit, or would you keep it at 300?
In the wrap? No, I'm tampering it down. Just like I do with chicken. As I'm getting towards the latter part of the open phase, I'm already starting to tone down my drum temp. That way, when I open up, start taking ribs inside, I'm not worried about temp spikes. I know when I run back out there, it's probably going to be sitting 250 to 260, and I'll let it roll anywhere 250, 260, 270. I always start on that lower end. If I'm running behind, I can always jack temp up, but
sure.
But that just tends to work pretty well with all the sugars that are in the wrap.
Yeah.
AJ, quit jumping ahead, man. I got a process. You jumping ahead.
Hey.
Don't make me put you in timeout. All right, man. Hey. We're moving on now.
Timeout, baby.
We're moving on. We're moving on. All right. So you got your charcoal going straight up and down 300 degrees when you're putting the what time is this? What time are you putting the ribs on?
7:30.
7:30. All right, man. So straight up and down 7:30. Are you running wood chunks in your can, or you running straight charcoal? Or now you got your outlaw, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, but I'm still kind of hybriding. So so now that I've kind of swapped over to that, I do one piece of cherry. That's it.
Cherry, okay.
One piece of cherry.
Let me ask you a question, because I love cherry wood, especially when I'm cooking at home. But do you think it adds, like, it makes a darker color? You always hear cherry gives a super dark color, and then, like, if you go more of the fruit woods, it's a more of a lighter smoke. Is that kind of your opinion on there?
I'm very careful with cherry. I love the smoke profile, but one little piece of cherry on the Hunsaker, on the Outlaw, I'm not running cherry wood, and as a matter of fact, on the Outlaw, I'm pretty much just running charcoal. I'm going to put a per protein on the Outlaw. It may be 1 or 2 splits of hickory.
I love, like I said, different meat proteins are, they respond better to different types of wood. The heavier proteins, brisket and pork butt, especially at home, like hickory is awesome. I love that hickory profile on, like, the bigger pieces of meat, but ribs, chicken, stuff like that, turkey. I mean, you definitely need more of a fruit based wood profile. I think
pecan has a great balance. I mean, it's sweet and nutty. It's a really good one as well.
I say probably 70% of people I know use pecan wood in their cooks, and that's across all proteins. It's pecan, not pecan. Look at the US.
Pecan, yes.
That's right. It's pecan, like the good Southerners say. But no, all right. So we got that. We got the wood going, and we're putting it on. You use a water pan, or?
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna run a water pan. Just a half pan shifted to one side. It's probably gonna have, I don't know, 25, 30 ounces of water in it, and it just it's always gonna. It just gives me the buffer, right? I mean, hot zone, cold zone, it gives me a safety layer.
Right. So who was it that said, and honestly, I never thought about it. I actually thought the water pan would add moisture to it. Maybe it was
it's golden blue.
Yeah, golden blue. Travis, he said it was a good thing. He said it kind of made me think. He said a water pan, I always thought a water pan is a buffer, of course, but also adds moisture to your proteins, and it just keeps the same amount of humidity in your cooker at all times.
It's temp stabilization.
It's a temp stabilizer, and it kind of, it takes one of the things out of your equation is when you run a water pan versus straight charcoal. So that was a cool little tidbit that I kind of learned from our boy Murphy. So yeah, I just wanted to add that there. But so are you running it to one side or right in the middle, or like, did you care?
No, I put it over to one side, and I'm basically 20 to 30 minutes, and I start rotating, just trying to get good even heat distribution on the bottom of the rib.
I got you. Here's a picture of those beauties on Hunt's cooker, like he was talking about. He's got the water pan on looks like the right side of the cooker, and you just ran 2 racks of ribs here.
Yep.
So is this early on in the process, right? I mean, this hadn't been sitting very long. I think I got you on the front end.
I can see how wet those are. Yeah, we probably hadn't, and you can see how clean the water is underneath. So we're probably only like 10 minutes on.
Right. I mean, and they look so sexy as they are, but you can see how the rub, like I said, a light layer rub. You can still see some of the meat poking through. It's a nice even layer. So are you all right? So you got the ribs on. You shut it down. How long do you rotate your ribs like you do, like a lot of people do on the gateway, or you just let them roll with that vortex? You don't have to.
No, I mean even with the vortex, I mean the vortex really is more of just a heat deflector. I feel like it makes the perimeter pretty hot. You do have somewhat of a safe space in the center of the drum, but I still rotate. I'm about every 20, 30 minutes, I'm giving it a spin, and whether I'm spinning 90 degrees, 180, what, I don't know. I'm out there jawing and having a good time talking to AJ. So I spin it a little bit and we go back to cutting up about something. So
Okay, so you're just rotating. You don't have a specific regiment that you stick to when it comes to spinning, because I know some people, AJ, have a very specific regiment when it comes to rotating their ribs. Some people do, every 30 minutes do 180 turn or a 90-degree turn. I mean, it just depends on the cooker. I guess it does make a difference, because you, like I said, you run a vortex, so I mean that's kind of a heat deflector. If you're running straight charcoal, I mean you need to for sure doing, because AJ, you run a deflector in yours, or you run straight?
Yes, I run a deflector in mine.
You run a deflector in yours the whole time, or do you ever take the deflector out?
Whole time. It's just on there. I don't run a water pan, just run it the whole time.
You do run a water pan, or you don't?
I don't.
Okay. So the water pan, like I said, if people run straight charcoal like I do, I run straight charcoal. I don't have a deflector. Maybe I need to start doing a deflector. I don't know. But like I said, I do the water pan, and I'll rotate about every 30 minutes. That way, one rack of ribs gets direct fire while the other one's kind of resting over the water pan, and vice versa. Do you think there's a better method? Like, you think that's a good method, or something you change up? Because obviously you guys are much better in ribs than I am.
I just think there's a lot of different ways to cook a great rib. I mean, you and Logan, we've talked about it. I mean, you can turn out some fantastic ribs on pellet grills. I mean, I know it's probably not the most popular opinion, but
I
pellet
disagree.
grills and ribs, they go really well together.
They go together like peas and carrots.
Yeah, you got that right. I mean, it's knowing your equipment. It's still just knowing your smoker, knowing the way that it wants to run. And like in this setup right here, it's easy enough if I am worried about my temps, it's easy enough to just pick up the rib and look at the bottom of it. If it's if it's coloring up too much too fast, well, I need to do something different. Right. But drums, that's part of cooking on a drum. The screw up factor is pretty tight with it because of those temps. So you let something run 10, 15 minutes too long on a drum, and no walks that day.
Well, like the thing about the drum is, the heat's coming directly from underneath. Like I last year I cooked all my ribs on my Lone Star cabinet pellet smoker. And with those, I had to rotate, because on a pellet smoker, unlike the drum where it's directly underneath the protein, it's similar to your offset. The main heat source is on the bottom right side of the pit. So if you don't rotate that, the ones that are closer to the fire source is going to be much farther along than the other ones. So for me, it was about every 30 minutes I'd do the Chinese fire drill and move them down the line and kind of do it that way. Otherwise, I've forgotten sometimes, and the one on the right is pulling a hunt. It's 190 degrees, and the one on the left's like 130. And you're like, what the hell is going on here?
Exactly. And I will say that the Outlaw, to me, it's got some sweet spots for different proteins also. And the ribs have the spot that they like to be at, which is, that's all good too. I wouldn't think twice about, running it on there.
Yeah. We got the champs in the house, man. They reign-in team of the year last year, Mr. Wheeze.
What up, Wheeze?
What up, man? Thank you for not doing a clean sweep on us like you did last year.
For real.
My ass is still a little sore from last year. I think all of us was.
Yeah.
But no, man. All right. So you got your ribbies on. You're sitting in there. About how long do you leave them on there until you're starting to think the color is going to get there? Like wait until the rub set, or
Ideally a minimum of 90 minutes. So I want to have them on the drum for at least 90 minutes. And then once again, kind of depending on what they're looking like. If I'm still without my rub being set, that next 30 minutes, I may pop them, like I said, on the Outlaw. I may pop them on the pellet smoker, depending on what I'm running that weekend. But we touched on it earlier. I used to, when I say layer rubs on ribs, I'm talking about layer rubs. And I would have
heavy rubs.
I never could set a rub on the drum. And so in the last, I don't know, probably midway through last year, I really started lightening up on the amount of rub that I was putting on the ribs. And the thing about it is, if you're not washing all that off in the wrap, if you're actually holding on to the rub profile that you want, I feel like I'm getting more flavor out of my ribs now with lighter layers of rubs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely went to that method in chicken. Less is more when it comes to chicken. So I mean, why can't the same thing be so on ribs? Although I feel like with pork, it's the exact opposite. I hammer my pork.
Agree.
Because that it can just take the abuse.
Oh,
just take it. Just take it. But all right, man. So we got the ribs, like I said, about 90 minutes on the grill. You're looking at it. Like, what kind of color were you looking for? Like a nice dark, like
I tend to shoot. I don't mind them darkening up. I still want them to have the, they all say the mahogany, the reddish brown tint, but I don't mind having a little darkness because it's going to lighten up a little bit when you put it in the wrap process. So like I said, I'm just, temp is one thing, but it really is more so at around 90 minutes. The color is where I want it to be. And when the rub sits, when it's on there, that's the color I want.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we got the rub. So we talk about your wrap. So we take and you usually cook 4 racks, correct? 3 or 4?
3 or 4 racks. Yeah.
And you're doing 8 bones, correct?
Yeah. 8 to 9 bones. Yep.
8 to 9 bones. All right. So we're moving on. We got your wrap. So we're taking the ribs off. What's your wrap looking like? Are we doing brown sugar in a raw, maple syrup? What are we looking like?
You're naming them. So I am Kerrygold salted. Put my butter down. So 1 stick of butter per rack of ribs. I just cut them long ways in half. Next, I'm gonna hit it with. I usually put a little bit of the Blues Hog OG down. I put some spicy honey, and then the turbinado sugar. And I'm gonna go. I put it down bone side. And then on the top side, I'm going to come back with more of the turbinado sugar and Tennessee Red. I'm wrapping them up, putting them back on the pit. About 30 minutes later, I'm flipping them the meat side down.
I got you. It's something I bought this year. I told AJ, but the butter cutter is something that I have heard many people talk about. And I saw it on sale on Amazon. I said, screw it. I don't be like the cool kids. It's I got that beautiful butter cutter, so I cannot wait to break that in this weekend. But with you, like you said, you use how many sticks? You said you use per wrap, half stick or a whole stick?
One whole stick. I just cut it in half.
Okay, half on the bottom, half on the top.
No. 2. It'll turn into just 2 pieces. I just half it long ways and it's going to be on the bottom side, and that's why I go bones down. And once all that goodness has melted nicely, then I'll flip them over to meat side down.
Oh, okay. So you do it opposite of most people then.
Yeah.
Well, most people do it, meat side down and then flip it over on the backside. But so you like starting off. Is there a reason you like that in your head that makes sense, or you just said screw it?
Cold butter pulls rub off of the rib.
Well, that makes sense. Fair enough.
At least in my world, it does. So
fair enough. So how long till you flip? You said about 30 minutes.
About 30 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, I got you. All right, so we got all that good stuff. I mean, all we're doing right there is braising. You're braising your meat and a lot of stuff, and there's no right or wrong method for what you put in your wrap. Because I mean, I've seen people do some sodas. I know people that do juices. I know some people that do turbinado sugar, brown sugar.
Logan, I make up a little shaker bottle with chicken stock, apple juice, and maple syrup. Basically equal parts, all of it. Shake it up real good. I actually keep that in my trailer all day. If anything that I'm cooking that day needs some fluid, I'm putting it in there. So I usually put maybe 3 or 4 ounces of that fluid in there also. But
okay,
that's kind of my go-to have available if anything's drying out and needs a hit of some moisture. That's the fluid I'm going to drop in.
Awesome, and that gives you that flavor blast use explosion that you're after. Making a comeback.
Winchester's coming up, AJ.
Yeah.
Flavor blast use explosion.
Wow.
I got to get AJ's face on a shirt with flavor blast use explosion. We're all gonna wear them. No, man. All right, so we got the meat in the wrap, and you're putting it back on. Around what time this is if you're shooting for it?
So you would say by 9:30 we are certainly on the grill. By 10 o'clock it's been flipped to meat side down. Usually by 10:30 I'm at least starting to check. Now, one thing, if I'm staying on the drum, the water pan that was shifted over to the right in the picture, I actually will freshen up the water and move it towards the middle of the drum.
Okay.
Not really for a heat deflector. When I go to checking my ribs and I'm going to lose some juice, I want it going into that water pan instead of going down into my fire.
Oh man, that's all right. Let's talk about that, because that is like every competition cook's worst nightmare, and we all know it, and we've all been there. And Hunt, you double wrap yours, right?
I do, yeah.
Yeah,
double wrap heavy full.
That's right, like a dirty girl do. I double wrap it. All right, so we're put it on there, and that worst sound that anybody hears is that of your rib, your wrap getting broken,
and you smell it too.
Oh, it's so bad. It makes you so mad because there's no fixing it. I mean, honestly, there's no correcting it. So that's something when you do it, especially I noticed that on my cabinet smoker, because I didn't have the straight across grates like you guys had. I had the crisscross, what you call it. Yeah, and it was tearing my foil on there when I was putting it on there, and I'm like, man, this sucks.
Yeah, I gotta put it on some bacon sheets or something like that.
I started putting them all on the pizza racks.
Yeah.
So I just that makes it so much easier, especially when it's in my pellet grill, like to rotate.
Yeah,
I would just take the pizza rack and just rotate it, around. So any stuff like that, it definitely helps. All right, so like you mentioned earlier with AJ that jumped ahead, you start off at 300 when you're cooking, and now after you wrap, what are you dropping it down to?
That's probably gonna be down around 270, 275.
Okay. Yeah. So you're really kind of lower, getting her down there.
Like I said on the Hunsaker, that's really 290, 300 on the grate. So sure. I mean, it's still a pretty heavy temp for wrap proteins, especially on the ribs itself. But there again, I've got some protection built in with the plate and the water pan. So if I was to start lagging behind, I mean, I can throttle it open and crank it up.
Sure, absolutely. All right, so are you putting a probe in your ribs, or you just?
I don't know. Maybe after Saturday, I might need to, but no, generally speaking, no. If I'm checking them by 10:30, so I'm gonna have chicken for me goes on at 10, and I'm checking my ribs before I start getting into my chicken wrap to make sure I don't need to make any adjustments while I got to turn my back and go in there and do chicken.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so we got the ribs on the can, or at this point you may flip them over to the outlaw.
Probably over on the outlaw by now. And
outlaw at this point.
Yeah, and outlaw, I'm running it 300 straight up. I'm on the outtake side of the pit over by the stack. It's going to be running just a couple of degrees hotter over there, and I'm letting it rip.
I got you. Okay, so we got them on there. They're cooking. And about what temp or how long until you start kind of probing it and checking it for feel? Like what time is that, or what temperature you're looking at?
So ideally my ribs, all the racks that I'm cooking should be off between 11 and 11:15. That's my goal. At that 10:30 checkpoint, I should not be where I want to be at, but I'm hoping I'm starting to hit closer to the 200 degree mark. When I'm getting on up towards that 208 to 210 level, and I like to probe on the bone side. I'm not good with probing on the meat side, so I probe on the bone side. When it starts to kind of break loose, when it starts to have the feel, I'm gonna flip it over and put it in my hands, and I need to see what the rack feels like. The probe takes me to one point. The final decision to pull is what do I feel in my hands, and this is where I'm gonna give a lot of props to AJ. This goes all the way back to Atlanta a couple of years ago. We were cooking next to each other, and the ribs felt pretty good, and I just said, hey, dude, come over here and have a look. AJ's excellent rib cooker, has taught me a lot about ribs, and I got him to come over there and have a feel on them. He just said, nope, they're not there. I mean, that quick. Here I am thinking it's time to put that rib up. Nope, you got to push it. If I remember right, he's like, they got 15 more minutes, And so while I don't probably have the exact feeling with my thermopin, the probe that AJ has down, my changeover is to put the rack in my hand and see what it feels like. So, everybody has their own technique.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's something like, me and AJ, we did the Razorbacks class in the off season, and I wanted to be, whenever Drew was at the point where he's probing, he's like, these ribs are almost there and all this. I had AJ kind of go there and kind of, because AJ, like you said, he does have a great feel for that, for tenderness. And I was like, hey, probe this, and he said, and he was kind of showing me what he's looking for as far as like, you want to almost be able to let your probe go and go, it's going to go straight through your rib.
It's pretty dang close to that. Like my probe on ribs, I mean, it pretty much feels like my money muscle and my brisket. There should be very little resistance.
Right. And honestly, something I've learned, and like I said, talking to some of the people on this show afterwards, little tidbits, you want to push them to the damn near mush. I mean, that 180 line right there is that 180 and mushy is, it's a thin, very thin line. Razor thin line. And that's why I like the greats like, Jordan Kirkpatrick and Chris Schaefer and Brad Leininger and Tim Shear, all those guys, they know that line and they know how to get right next to it and then immediately pull. Because
here's the deal too, Logan. I mean, that line is different for every rack of ribs that you cook. Exactly. Every rack is different. And man, if we could nail every one of them, we'd be cooking one rack of ribs. It's just, I can't. There comes 3 and 4 racks of ribs, but I think that's the coolest thing about ribs is just how different different one rack versus the other can act, and it does freak you out. Like I said, I'm hour and 10 minutes in on Saturday, and just felt like I should put a probe in. Honestly, put a probe in because the color was starting to look a little bit different, and man, that freaked me out seeing 190 degrees. But hey, the ribs act differently. You gotta, it's like the defensive situation. You got to read and react at that point.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, and it's another thing, like the different brands of ribs that people cook on here, like Prairie Fresh. If that's why it's a good thing if you pick whatever, Smithfield's, Prairie Fresh, Allegiance, Compart, Wichita's. I mean, whatever, they're all fantastic ribs, and people have won with every brand we just mentioned. But pick a brand and stick with it because it's easier. I feel like because Allegiance, you got to push a lot farther, especially in the early goings, like of you getting in your competition career. If you flip flop between, this week I'm cooking Prairie Fresh, this week I'm cooking Compart, this week I'm cooking Allegiance. I mean, all those are fantastic products, but they all have their own tendencies, right? So, like Allegiance, you got to push, I feel like, a lot farther than you do a Prairie Fresh. And then Wichita's, you don't push as far.
Yeah, and a lot of that is the fat content, but the different breed of hog is, it's carrying a different nature to the fat in the meat. And like I said, I laid out about the 3 brands that I cook. Well, why? Well, it's what I can get my hands on.
Sure.
It's what I can find that I feel confident taking to a competition.
Absolutely. All right, man. So we're pulling it out, of the so we're pulling it off the smoker. What time, ideally, if everything is running right, what time are you pulling these off? Like how much of a rest are you giving it?
Yeah, if everything has run perfectly smooth, my ribs will all come off between 11 and 11:15. When I make the decision, I feel them, and I like how everything feels. I'm wrapping them up tight. There you go, wrapping them up tight, and I have one of those little with an Igloo or Coleman, the little party stacker coolers.
Sure, yeah.
Easily is going to hold 4, 5, 6 racks of ribs, and I put them in there, and I don't think about them until I've got chicken turned in.
I got you. AJ, you like a long rest on yours. Like, what time are you pulling yours off? You like 2 hours, don't you?
No. I'm pretty close to hunt. I'm probably like 11:15, 11:30-ish. I want them off in the camera, so I want at least hour 15 rest on mine.
See, that's why I was screwing up. I like mine getting off around 12:25. Because I didn't know what the hell to do the whole tenderness games you guys are talking about. So I pulled them bad boys off trying to cut it as quick as possible.
You think about, when hunting, you got to put them to, push them to they dang them mush. And you said it before, where I think is you kind of want the rib to tighten up a little bit before you start cutting into it.
Yeah. That's got to bring her back a little bit.
Yep.
Well, ribs have a huge rubber band effect, man. I feel like more so than other proteins. Like ribs, once you pull them off, like, because I mean, AJ, I pulled AJ over here before, and I'm like, hey, probe my ribs. And AJ will probe. He said, yeah, they feel good. And then go back over. I think he was, sandbagging me, but he really wanted to beat me. He knew he could beat me in chicken, so he had to do that. No, but anyways, but they, they were like, every time I probe them, and they were like really, really tender, really, really, right where I want them. But my thing is, though, it's that rest period I wasn't doing, I didn't push them far enough, because the rest, I feel like, if you take your ribs, 95% of the way, that rest is going to bring them back to about 80%. So you got to take into, consideration the pullback or the tighten phase. So, if you think your ribs are over, I mean, let them sit there a little longer, and they usually will tighten up, unless you just nuked them and the bones are popping out.
Yeah, and I mean, you're cooking for I know obviously this is, for the comp side of things, but you're cooking for one bite.
Yeah.
And it can't be, oh man, I was almost there with it. You're trying to nail that bite. And it is the balance of when you take that bite, everything comes cleanly off the bone. All the rest of the meat stays on there. And man, it's tough. Ribs are challenging. They're a fun cook, but I scratch my head a lot with ribs.
Yeah, ribs is to me the hardest meat to cook, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. They're also my favorite ones to cook. Least results.
Michael,
Michael has a great question. Do y'all rest ribs with the juice still in the foil, or do y'all vent the foil, pour out the juice during the rest? That's a great question, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
I did both ways early on, and I have come to learn that you definitely leave the juice.
Absolutely.
You want to just leave it in there. It's going to keep the heat on there. It's going to add, it's not going to hurt any. It's going to not allow it to dry up or anything like that. So just definitely, you vent them. I say vent them for 10 seconds, and then shut it back up.
Enough to check the temperature, and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, I bent mine when I'm checking the temp.
Yep. So I mean, like I said, leave them in the juice, and I mean, I know a lot of people just leave it on the table. You don't have to put it in the Cambro, especially like. I mean, I don't think you necessarily. I don't know. It depends on how far you push them. If they're a little mush, you can leave them on the table. But if not, put them in a Cambro and forget about them. They'll be fine.
It's a timing game. It really is. Like I said, we're talking ideal situations, being off around 11:15.
Yeah.
Like I said, Saturday, after I had to hold them prior to the wrap, I ended up cooking ribs till noon to finally break through to get the tenderness I wanted.
There we go. That's a time limit you need to be on.
And hey, it wasn't ideal, but I mean, once again, 4 racks of ribs, I got to find 6 bones. However, the 6 bones I found, they didn't like, so it didn't matter. So.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're taking them off. So you're taking off all 4 racks. And are you pulling them off one by one and tasting them and then setting aside at the time, or how do you do yours?
Yeah, so I keep on the back of my trailer. I'm gonna have a big foil pan out there.
Sorry, Mikey, sloth.
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 At this point, I'm gonna drain off all of my ribs, get all that juice out of the way. I don't need it anymore. Run inside, and I actually have a big cooling rack, whatever you call it, heavy duty. And I'm gonna line up all my racks of ribs on there, assess what the presentation side looks like. I'm probably gonna hit them with a little bit more honey pecan, and then I'm gonna go back to the smoker for maybe about 5 minutes just to start drying my surface off a little bit.
Did you say you? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Did you say you dunk or you brush, or how do you apply your sauce?
Not at this point. At this point, all I'm doing is putting a little bit of rub back on the meat side because I just came out of the wrap, and I run them back out to the smoker for maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna bring them inside and start having my looks. At this point, I'm on my table. I just lay down a bed of sauce. I go meat side down. I like to use electric knife. And I start making my selections, and I taste my bones. I need to make sure that each rib has the same taste profile. And then, of course, at that point, I'm looking for moisture and the tenderness. And then once I have my ribs selected, however I'm going to make my box, I dunk my ribs.
Right. So another great question. TNS Barbecue Competition Team said, crazy question. Do you go by which rack is best, or do you check each individual bone looking for the best?
Yes and no. So I have no problem saying it. If I turn in a 6-bone box, I probably wasn't exactly thrilled with necessarily the rib cook. It doesn't mean that I can't find the 6 best and turn in and try to make a nice looking box. But ideally, I want 4 on 4. And if I'm really proud of it, I'm turning in 10 bones.
Right. The main thing is though, especially like when you're cutting your ribs, I like taking, at least 3 to 4 bones, especially 4 bones if I can, off of one rack, because if you try to, jigsaw puzzle it, you're not going to have that pretty box, look. They don't go together because they weren't made together anyways. So try to take 3 to 4 bones off of your if you have 4 racks, pick your favorite 2 racks, and then the best rack out of those, put those on the ones that the judges are grabbing, right?
Sure.
Yep. Yeah, so, absolutely.
All right. So you picked like you said, you picked your favorite 2 racks, and then you took your best 4 out of that, and then you put them on the grate like this.
Yep.
And this is what he's looking like when he's setting his sauce right here. He you dunk the ribs, put them on here, put them back on. How long are you leaving on to set the sauce?
The drum's going to be tamped down to about 250 degrees. I'm hoping to get 5 to 7 minutes on here. I've got a little, as soon as I dunk and put them on this cooling rack, I do add some finishing dust on there as well. Finishing dust is nothing more than a fine grind on the rubs that I've already used. So
right.
Not adding any new flavors.
So is the finished dust on the top or top and bottom?
Just top.
Top.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just top.
I got you. Are you painting the walls, or the way you stack them? I guess it doesn't matter too much, does it?
No, but when I come back inside after I've kind of handled them, when I move ribs around, I use one of those like cake spatula type things.
Yeah.
And so I have a look at them, and if I need to touch up the outer walls on them, I certainly, the inners are not going to be a big deal because they're almost going to stick together with sauce, but the outer walls, yeah, I'll touch them up.
Sure. And I'm glad I got this picture. So I'm always worried, and AJ, I'm sure you're a pro at this, so you don't care too much, but I'm always worried. So my perfect rib, if you look at the bottom left corner, that rib right there has an equal or even meat on both sides of the bone, versus say the top right, where all the meat's on the one side of the bone. I'm always worried about, I'm like, obviously you're trying to take, idiot proof your box, but
yeah,
my luck, obviously in my mind, a judge is going to take that top right rib right there, and we try to eat from the left side, and I'm like, surely they're not that stupid. They're gonna be like, all right, I want to try this meat. Like, does that come into consideration with you, or not really? Obviously the top 2 right-handed corners are both like that.
For me, I'm just trying to get a straight slice. Ideally it'd be awesome if I had even meat distribution on each side of the bone, but you're at the mercy of what the rib will give you as well. Yeah. And if they're going to pick it up and bite it off on, the side that doesn't have any meat on it, well,
that's on you then. Yeah,
that's on them. I'm looking for 5 spores. So
right. Absolutely. All right. So you got that, you're pulling it off, and then we're boxing. Let's talk box strategy. I'll pull up one of your beautiful. I think you have one of the prettier rib boxes, and especially in the backyard scene. Here's when you. I don't know if this is Saturday or Sunday. I can't. Friday or Saturday. Saturday.
That's Friday night.
That's the award-winning ribs right there, ladies and gentlemen. So this one, you were feeling good. You got your stack 4 and 4. So like we said earlier, you're taking your best rack, and those are going to be your top row, correct?
That's right.
And then because the thought process behind that, your best, because there's always going to be your best rack and your second best. So put your best rack always on top, because that's the ones that the judges are going to grab. They're not supposed to, I don't think they're technically supposed to, but no judge is going to dig behind like, oh, I want that third rack from the bottom. They're just going to grab what's right in front of them. And you use kale there as well, it looks like. And those are well rounded. Do you use like any like kind of shields or anything? You're just kind of stuffing.
Nah, just make the little florets or whatever you call them, stuff them in there, and I'll just try to make sure that I've got a good linear edge with it. Try to make sure they look nice, and then I hit my kale with a little spray to get that pop of green with it.
I got you. Buzz come in there, said J-Cup training teaches judges they are supposed to sample from the medial side of the bone. Good to know. That is good to know, Buzz. Thank you for that tidbit. I always was curious. All right, so you got that. You got your. I mean, this is a beautiful box. Obviously, it's a one damn near 180 box. Do you do the little cooking oil spray on top of the lid trick?
Yeah.
When you do yours,
I put a little duck fat up there. I mean, ribs are notorious, especially these are some big ribs for wanting to touch the lid of the box, which it's not supposed to mark you down at all in terms of your score, but you don't want it to affect the presentation of the protein. So just a little of the duck fat on top. If the rib does touch it, I find that it pulls less of the barbecue sauce off of the rib.
Yep, that is a pro tip there, guys. Like I said, anytime you do your ribs, spray the top, and you can rub it in with a paper towel. Don't leave it looking greasy, but kind of wipe it in and then close it. That way, if the top of the box does touch your ribs, it's not going to pull as much sauce off the rib. So definitely, I mean, you could definitely tell, the finishing dust you do kind of a light layer. It all kind of blends in really well there. But I mean, that's a really, really pretty box. You can tell, the racks are, excuse me, from the same rack. I mean, it's just two racks there. They all blend really well together, and nice, beautiful color.
And you got to think that the little flecks of finishing dust. I mean, there were 70 plus teams that cooked in that event. So by the time you close the box, a little residual heat off of it, it's gonna melt right into the sauce. You'll actually lose the appearance of those small little flecks of dust.
Right. Absolutely. Well, man, like I said, that's a beautiful box. And last question, man, do you like on your ribs, do you like turning in towards more to the front or more towards the back?
With the way that I process and do everything, I'm usually towards the latter 5 minutes, to be honest with you. Chicken, I try to get in early and give myself plenty of time to work on ribs, but I'm usually, I'm between 12:30, 12:35, which of course when we're cooking pork doesn't leave me the time I need. But luckily Amanda's been able to cook with me the last couple weekends and running boxes, so that gives me plenty of time to get into the third meat.
Absolutely. Well, man, that's some great tips, guys. Like I said, if you watched the entirety of tonight's show, or if you came in a little late, like I said, make sure you check it out on a replay on our Facebook page, Instagram, YouTube, and on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Hunt, thank you so much for coming on today, man, and giving us, like I said, a little Shiggin episode with your award-winning ribs. Like I said, when it comes, I mean, pro circuit, backyard circuit, it doesn't matter. I mean, game respects game, and definitely you're up there with some of the best.
I appreciate it, man. It's, how it is. It's always a pleasure to get together and talk shop, for sure.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. But I really appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing. Like I said, guys, people who don't know, who are not familiar with competition barbecue, getting little bits of information like this. I mean, people charge $650 for a class, or for 2 meets, $270. So I mean, we're giving this away to you for free. So if you want to do us a favor, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this page, Facebook, and on your Apple and Spotify. We would really appreciate it. We love giving our guests information and entertainment, and we hope you like tonight's show. And I truly enjoy it. Obviously, if you're ever at a barbecue comp with us, I mean, us three are always right next to each other. Just follow the music, you'll find us. That's usually a good way to do it. So, but man, like I said, that's all we have for tonight. Next week we're gonna wrap it up, and we got brisket coming on. I got another Jack champion coming on the show, the return. So make sure you tune in for all you brisket addicts and wants to learn some tips and tricks on brisket. But Hunt, like I said, let people know where to find you, and if you want to give any shout outs to your sponsors, now's the time.
Heck yeah. Well, we're Smoky Bees Barbecue. It's me and Amanda Blackledge. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and for our sponsors, Gulf Coast Smoke,
Lonzo.
Alonzo. I mean, just we're so thrilled. This is our first year running with Alonzo, and loving his products. So everybody check him out. Man Meat Barbecue with Aaron Stoffer. This is our second year with Man Meat, and man, I'm such a firm believer in the products that he puts out. He has some great rubs and sauces, injections, and then Springer Mountain Farms, best chicken there is.
Springer Mountain Farms. Springer Mountain Farms. No, I'm kidding.
But wait for it.
I know. I got to do Springer Mountain Farms. And the Barbecue Bus Peep Show. Check it out. I know.
Hey, that's right. Good stuff.
It's won an award or two. Hey, and apparently it wins. The beef show wins brisket because the bus,
yes,
took the first place brisket at Smoking Ashore, and that's a big deal.
Yes, sir.
So,
I'm ready to try it.
Check out all his rubs and injections. But man, that's our show tonight, guys. Thank y'all so much. Like I said, we appreciate you being here with us tonight. And if you could show us some love, like I said, wherever you're watching us, make sure if you're not a subscriber, follow us and share us and spread the good news of the Right on Cue podcast. But as always, when it comes to barbecue, make sure you're always right on cue. See you guys.
That's all, folks.